The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by our guest chaplain, Reverend Elliot Powell, Westminster Presbyterian Church, Lubbock, Texas.
Let us pray. Sovereign and gracious God, we give you thanks for the United States of America as it marks 250 years of democratic life. Thank you for the privilege of self-governance, government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and for those called to serve within this chamber on behalf of the nation. Your word declares there is no authority except from God, and those authorities that exist have been established by God. As you have established these men and women in service, equip them, I pray, with all they need. Bestow upon them clarity and courage, conviction and civility. Be their strength in a time of uncommon burdens. Be their shield in a season too often shadowed by politically motivated violence. And may it be that the fruit of their labors is the flourishing of all people across this great nation. All this I pray in the strong and saving name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Garcia.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Without objection, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Arrington, is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, it's a great honor and delight to hear the familiar voice of my pastor, Elliot Powell, opening up the People's House with prayer, a tradition that began at the very first Congress in 1789. Reverend Powell is the pastor of Westminster Presbyterian Church in Lubbock, Texas, USA. He is joined today in the chamber gallery by his wife, Shannon Aycock Powell, and their 3 children, Lila, Carissa, and Adam, and his niece, Chloe. My wife, Ann, and I have been blessed beyond measure to be a part of the Westminster community, and we are exceedingly grateful for the prayers, support, and friendship of our fellow parishioners. Mr. Speaker, the 19th century French philosopher Alexis de Tocqueville traveled across the United States in the early 1800s in search of what he said was, quote, America's genius and greatness. He said it wasn't in the commodious harbors or the fertile fields, not the public schools or institutions of higher learning, not the Democratic Congress even, or our matchless Constitution, believe it or not. He said it wasn't until I entered into the churches of America and with their pulpits aflamed with the gospel of Jesus that I understood, quote, the secret of her genius and power. That's when he coined the phrase, that famous phrase, America's great because America is good. Mr. Speaker, may God continue to bless America through the goodness of His church and His many faithful under-shepherds like my dear friend Elliot Powell. I yield.
The chair will entertain up to 5 further requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today is National POW MIA Recognition Day, a day to remember the brave men and women who served their country but have not returned home. Currently, there are more than 80,000 American service members who are still missing and remain unaccounted for from World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Cold War, and the Gulf Wars. Our service members answer the call to protect and defend our country in times of war and in times of peace. We have a sacred compact with the men and women who serve, and will never stop searching for the ones who remain missing and unaccounted for until they return to their loved ones. That is why today I reintroduced a resolution that urges our trading partners to aid in the search and recovery efforts of our nation's missing service members. Mr. Speaker, we will never stop searching until all our service members are brought home. They and their loved ones deserve no less. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life of the Honorable Gladys Tony Bransford. Gladys was born in the Jim Crow South in Madison County, Alabama. To grow up in that era and go on to serve as a judge is truly remarkable. In 1986, then Mayor Kathy Whitmire appointed her to the bench in Houston, and I had the profound honor of swearing her in. She was a great judge, Mr. Speaker, tough and fair, always giving everyone a full hearing in their day in court. She built circles of sisterhood as a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta and through her decades in the Link Incorporated. Above it all, Judge Bransford often said her greatest joy was her family, 3 accomplished children and 6 beautiful grandchildren. Mr. Speaker, Judge Bransford was a friend and a dear colleague, and it is especially an honor for me to be able to lift her life here today and on the floor of the United States Congress. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from South Carolina seek recognition?
Seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor an extraordinary man of God and a true pillar in our community. Dr. Steve Hurt is the pastor of Temple Baptist Church in Anderson, South Carolina, and I'm blessed to call him my pastor. This year, he is celebrating 50 years in ministry. Dr. Hurt felt called to preach at the early age of 8, and by 20 years old had devoted his life to serving the Lord. Since 2013, Dr. Hurt has faithfully pastored at Temple Baptist Church. Though he carries himself with humility and gentleness, when he speaks from the Word, there is a strength and an authority that can only be described as God working through him. He's not afraid to speak the hard truths of Scripture, even when they're unpopular. Dr. Hurt is proof of what God can do with a life fully surrendered to him. He has touched thousands of lives, including mine. And South Carolina is better because of his faithfulness. Please join me today in celebrating Dr. Steve Hurt for 50 years of unwavering service. And thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Pennsylvania seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome, ma'am.
When I came to Congress in 2019, I knew it was a time of great tension, yet I was motivated all the more to do this work. In the almost 7 years since, our empathy, our common humanity, has been tested in unimaginable ways. The latest, the horrific murder of Charlie Kirk. Beyond the horror of such a vile act is the pervasive, ugly rise in political violence. We've witnessed it in my home state of Pennsylvania with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in Butler, and again with the arson attack on Governor Josh Shapiro's home on Passover with his family sleeping upstairs, and again in Minnesota with the murder of House Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman, her husband Mark, and their dog in their home, and now again in Utah Valley University. We must condemn political violence in all its form, in all its twisted motivations and perverse ideologies. We must instead commit ourselves to civic engagement, education, commit ourselves to decency and dignity and the truth for the good of this nation, our neighbors, our families, and most especially our children. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
And extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 9 days ago in my district, a loving husband and father of 2 children, a public figure who debated vigorously conservative values, and a representative of free speech was assassinated by a deranged coward who felt that violence was the only way to deal with voices that he opposed. Mr. Speaker, from Charlie Kirk's example, I've learned that we should live boldly, without fear. We should address and confront the cowards of the world who will oppose with violence those that seek to destroy free speech. I've also learned from Charlie Kirk that we should debate vigorously, that we have opinions, and in this hall, this sacred hall, we can debate those opinions with respect and vigor. And Mr. Speaker, I've also learned that we should love completely. Charlie Kirk never degraded an individual that he debated. He always approached them with respect, and in an intent with a loving approach, tried to push forward his views and offer them as an alternative to those that debated him. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to point out that a widow and two amazing children are now left without a husband and a father. And to Eric and those children, I'll just say that God has a special place in his heart for the widows of the world. Since ancient times, the widow of Zarephath with Elijah, the mite that the widow cast into the temple treasury, as well as Jesus Christ's own mother, Mary, a widow, whom Jesus on the cross, while he suffered and died for all mankind, offered that widow, his mother, to his most beloved apostle to take care of for the rest of her life and make sure that she was cared for. Eric, I'll just say to you and your children, God has a special place in his heart for the widows, for the orphans, and you also have a special place not only in my heart, but in the hearts of millions as you suffer through the loss of your husband, as well as the father of your children. Mr. Speaker, I'm inspired by Charlie Kirk and his example, and the fact that his life now transcends not only his life and his message, but he stands for something more important now, which is freedom of speech, a constitutional privilege that our nation will fight vigorously to protect. And I join with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to shun and eschew violence and to pursue freedom of speech through the rest of my days. Mr. Speaker, thank you for this time, and God bless America, Charlie Kirk and his widow, as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Does the gentleman yield back? For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for the 43rd time today to call on the Trump administration to restore life-saving food aid for starving children around the world. Adhesion Nutrition, an organization in my district in North Kingstown, Rhode Island, manufactures Plumpy Nut, a nutritional supplement that is needed to get starving children back to health. Because when kids are starving, their organs break down and they cannot digest conventional food. Millions of lives have been saved by this product, and now there are thousands of boxes sitting in a warehouse in Rhode Island because the Trump administration has stopped this program. They continue to promise that they're going to bring it back online. Over and over again, they have said that this program, they've even named the organization in my district, they have said that it will continue. But it's been 9 months, and we are still waiting. We're about to debate and vote on a budget. What is the purpose of passing a budget if the administration will just ignore it? I have spoken on this floor about the humanitarian necessity to restore this program, the national security necessity to restore this program, but it is a constitutional necessity as well, because the legislative branch has the authority to pass budgets and the executive must execute on them. I will continue to speak on this floor every day until this program is restored, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life and legacy of my dear friend and brother in Christ, Dr. John Thomas, a devoted husband, father, and community leader who dedicated his life to serving his neighbors in West Texas and those around the world. Dr. Thomas was a skilled surgeon, but his true calling was healing hearts and lifting souls. In 1999, he founded Operation Hope, a nonprofit that deployed teams of healthcare professionals to underserved areas across the globe. His faith was his compass, Mr. Speaker, as he lived the words of Jesus to love thy neighbor and to do unto the least of these. Through his tireless medical missions, disaster relief efforts, and unwavering advocacy for the sanctity of life. To Carrie and Andrew and the entire Thomas family, our hearts and prayers are with you. And I can assure you that Dr. Thomas's light will continue to shine through the countless lives he touched, and especially and most of all in you, Carrie, and in his beloved son, Andrew. May God comfort you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to share concerns I've heard from people back home. I've traveled across eastern North Carolina, and residents, they've pulled me aside, they've texted our office, they've called, emailed, and many conveyed the same concern about rural health care. We've already seen the closure of Martin General Hospital. We're working hard to reopen it as a rural emergency hospital. Eastern North Carolinians face some of the greatest health care disparities in our state. Nearly 70,000 in my district rely on the Affordable Care Act premium tax credits. People in rural America are struggling. Many are trying to do everything just to make ends meet while raising children. Every time it seems like we take one step forward, we're taking 2 or 3 backward. No matter if it's healthcare, trade, infrastructure, Congress must not leave rural America behind. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
I'd like to make a unanimous request to speak for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
It seems hard to believe that it's not even 10 days since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Of course, we all know why he was assassinated. He was assassinated in part because he stood by our Constitution and believed in the limited government that our forefathers wanted. But of course, he was also killed for his Christianity. He was really far more of I've come to realize he was far more of a religious leader than he was a political leader. We have to now follow what he would have wanted had he survived. And I think that's 2 things. First of all, in America right now, church attendance was down. We can all be wonderful Christians without going to church, but it's a bad sign that church attendance was going down. Let us all redouble our efforts to support our local churches, look for Bible-believing churches, as Charlie Kirk wanted, and hopefully they will grow and thrive. And in Congress, let's try to get back one more time to the limited government that our Constitution so clearly demanded. We'll stop asking the federal government to add another program after program after program, but instead have the type of government that encourages self-reliance and strong families. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to celebrate El Salvador's Independence Day, a day marking the end of Spanish colonial rule 204 years ago. And this week, Salvadorians across the globe celebrated with music, parades, and cultural traditions. I celebrated with food, and I'm honored to represent a vibrant and growing Salvadoran community in Virginia. So, Unión, Libertad, and Dios, happy Independence Day to El Salvador. I also rise today to express deep concern over the recent reports of violence against minority communities, including Hindus in Bangladesh. And in the aftermath of Bangladesh's changing government, we've heard, including from my constituents, accounts of looting and vandalism of homes and damages to religious sites like temples. And these acts represent a pattern of violence against communities around the world. And while we continue to work towards stability in places like Bangladesh, we simply have to acknowledge what's going on and can't turn a blind eye to it. Thank you, and I yield back.
The chair lays before the House the communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. Following my appointment to the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, I hereby resign from the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, effective today. Signed sincerely, Maxwell Alejandro Frost, Member of Congress.
Without objection, the resignation is accepted. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 722, I call up to Bill H.R. 5371, the Continuing Appropriations and Extensions Act of 2026, and ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 5371, a bill making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes.
Pursuant to House Resolution 722, the bill is considered read. The bill shall be debated for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee of Appropriations and the respective designees. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole, and the gentlelady from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro, will each control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Oklahoma.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the measure under consideration.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. I rise today in support of H.R. 5371, the Continuing Appropriations and Extension Act of 2026. This Congress has a fundamental responsibility to fund the government and keep it open and serving the American people. It's a duty I take seriously and one that I've worked diligently to lead on. Over the past year, the House Appropriations Committee has acted to fulfill our fiscal year 2026 responsibilities. Constraints and challenges didn't stop us from doing the hard work, line by line, to uphold physical discipline and effective governance. I'm proud to say our markup process delivered all 12 regular appropriations bills out of committee. We've also passed 3 of these bills across the floor, representing more than 60% of overall discretionary spending. That momentum has continued with our move to conference on our first 3-bill package, covering military construction and Veterans Affairs, agriculture, and the legislative branch bills. This marks the first conference on major appropriations legislation in close to a decade, and it's a critical step for this institution for restoring regular order. We are certainly moving forward productively, and a bipartisan, bicameral agreement is firmly within our grasp. We just need more time to sustain negotiations and complete our work. That's why we're here today, Mr. Speaker. The continuing resolution before us is simple. It extends funding until November 21st. It's a clean, short-term stopgap that protects the FY26 progress we've made and allows the appropriations process to advance toward full-year bills. It allows us to return the appropriations process to regular order where it should be. This is the responsible path. I want to remind my friends on the other side of the aisle what this measure is. It's a clean CR that keeps the lights on for the American people while we finish our work. It contains no poison pills or partisan riders. It provides essential security measures for all 3 branches of government, and it's a short extension, just 7 weeks. By keeping our government funded, it protects our military and defense needs, supports our veterans, and sustains critical services for our constituents, from roads, parks, and water projects to infrastructure, research, and job training. This tailored, straightforward approach is exactly what Democrats previously asked for. Now they're rejecting it to manufacture a partisan fight over provisions totally unrelated to appropriations. Let me be very clear. A shutdown would do nothing to help our work on full-year bills or to support the American people. So if you want stability for the American people, if you want time for negotiations in good faith, and if you want regular order, you'll support this CR. Any other vote would be reckless, not just for both parties, but for the entire nation. I've said this previously, but it remains relevant today. Republicans and Democrats are more effective when they negotiate
rather than provoke partisan confrontations. And the country is better off when Republicans and Democrats actually work together. Let's do that now. We must act today for our country, for our national security, and for our constituents. I hope that all will join me in keeping the government open and serving the American people. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Thank you. Again, Republicans have chosen a partisan route. In essence, this was the negotiation around the continuing resolution. There was a consensus that it should have been a bipartisan negotiation. That consensus was abrogated. So again, Republicans choose a partisan route. They would rather shut down the government than sit down and talk with Democrats about lowering costs for millions of Americans, preventing people from getting kicked off of their health care, and stopping President Trump and Budget Director Russ Vought from stealing from our communities and from our constituents. Democrats will not support the partisan Republican spending bill because it continues to gut health care of the American people. We are now 9 months into this administration, and the cost of living crisis has only gotten worse. Americans are struggling with the rising costs for everyday necessities. They live paycheck to paycheck. And instead of lowering prices, President Trump and Republicans passed a bill to strip health care coverage from more than 15 million people, threaten Medicare benefits owed to America's seniors, and slash nutrition benefits for working families, which will cause an additional 1 million kids to go hungry. They did this to pass trillions of dollars in tax cuts for big corporations and for billionaires. And they add $4 trillion to the national debt over the next 10 years. Republicans' funding bills are cut from the same cloth. They help billionaires and big corporations grow their power, raise prices on the backs of the middle class and the working class. But what is coming out of the White House is even worse. President Trump's administration, led by Russ Vought, is unlawfully stealing funds that Democrats and Republicans passed into law. Yes, the agreements that we have reached over the years, Democrats, Republicans, House, and Senate have said yes, they've been signed into law, and now an unelected official, Russ Vought, is stealing that money and using it for what purposes we don't even know. This administration continues to freeze, to terminate, and cancel $410 billion. It's in commitments to families, to farmers, to children, to small businesses, and communities in every part of our country. Billions of these commitments will soon be lost forever if Congress refuses to rein in this administration's illegal actions. As much as $5 billion for the National Institutes of Health and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will be wasted. Money promised to help farmers and ranchers drive advancements in agriculture is at risk. Over $1 billion in nonprofit security grants and homeland security grants that keep our communities safe may disappear, and hundreds of millions of dollars in resources to help Americans deal with the increased cost of housing will evaporate. Put simply, this White House seeks to undo any agreement made by Congress. Russ Vought wants a shutdown, and House Republican leadership is handing it to him on a silver platter. He wants the confusion so he can keep stealing from our communities without accountability. These are not normal times. We are not considering this funding during normal circumstances. A vote for this bill is a vote for the status quo, but now is the time to stand up to the theft and disregard for the middle class, the working class, and vulnerable Americans. Now is the time to prevent the health care crisis and to lower costs. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle would say the health care costs are not germane to this bill. Well, take a look at your continuing resolution. 67 of the 91 pages of that resolution deal with health care issues, whether they are health care extenders or whether they are health care for veterans. So it is absolutely appropriate that we talk about how the administration has gutted health care, caused a health care crisis, increasing costs for people. Now is the time to put an end to the Trump administration's corruptions that as hardworking Americans are paying for. Democrats want to lower costs, deliver critical services to all Americans, and that can be achieved through the continuing resolution that Senator Patty Murray and I introduced yesterday. It cannot be achieved through a Republican shutdown. This partisan bill reflects a broken political system. Democrats want to protect the millions of working Americans who will be forced to choose between paying for food or their health care, or the cancer patients and people struggling with chronic disease who will have to choose between having health care coverage at all or keeping a roof over their family's head. But the Republican majority ignores the democratically elected representatives for half of the country to appease their leader. Let us hope the majority does not drive us straight to a Republican shutdown. But if they do shut the government down, I have no doubt the American people will know who is to blame. Vote no on this bill that fails to address the needs of Americans. Join Democrats at the table. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, the gentleman from Missouri and a distinguished member of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Alford.
The gentleman from Missouri is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Chairman Cole. Thank you to our ranking member for your leadership as we move towards regular order in the appropriations process. And I appreciate the ranking member's passion because of this issue, but we are not here today, Mr. Speaker, to talk about rest vote. We're here to talk about keeping the government open and avoiding a Schumer shutdown. And that is why I rise today in strong support of this short-term CR, the continuing resolution. This CR will ensure the federal government remains open and working for our constituents. It ensures that our troops get paid on time and that our veterans continue getting the health care they need and other benefits that they have earned. It also ensures the Trump administration can continue its work to secure our border, secure our communities from violent crime, and secure a stronger economy. Under the leadership of Chairman Cole, we have passed all 12 spending bills out of committee on a condensed timeline. And for the first time in years, regular appropriation bills are now headed to conference committee, showing that appropriators are engaged in good faith bipartisan, bicameral negotiations. Keeping our government open and working for the American people should not be a partisan issue, but it appears our Democrat colleagues want to make it one. And as you'll see throughout this debate today, Democrats' proposals is full of partisan priorities that would explode the federal debt by $1.5 trillion. Let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, if our Democrat colleagues vote against this clean CR to keep our government open, they will own the shutdown. This will be a Schumer shutdown. The media will not be able to spin it. The American people will see straight through their gaslighting and political posturing to the contrary. That is why, Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support the continuing resolution and keep our government open. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized. The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
I just would let the gentleman from Missouri understand that without the increase in the premium subsidies that were in the ACA that have been cut back, in his district, the premiums will go up $760 for folks, and 265,000, almost 266,000 people will lose their health care. Now I want to yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Florida, the distinguished ranking member of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Subcommittee, Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
The gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentlelady for yielding. I rise to object to this Republican funding scam that simply continues the relentless financial pain America's families, seniors, and businesses face right now. And the reason I object so strenuously is because it absolutely does not have to be this way. Democrats have a funding proposal that cancels cruel cuts, lowers costs, and saves Americans' health care coverage. Our plan prevents 24 million Americans from enduring a massive 93% spike in their health care premium costs. How could any Republican vote for a funding bill with that kind of financial sledgehammer hanging over your constituents' heads? But Democrats' plan values families, not billionaires and big corporations. It prevents nursing homes from closing. It ensures 15 million Americans don't lose health coverage. Republicans refuse to sit down and figure this out, just like every family does at their kitchen table each week. Republicans are choosing to go it alone, no matter the consequences. So what Democrats will not do is support a partisan spending bill that guts health care for the American people. We will not support a plan that lets Trump freeze funds promised to our communities and hold up life-saving medical research, including for kids with cancer. Democrats will never support that. What we will support is our plan, which saves a family of four earning $64,000 a year from seeing their annual health care premiums go up by $2,571, or 197%. Democrats will support permanently extending health insurance tax credits to keep coverage affordable. What we will not do is make this Republican-created health care coverage crisis worse. We need to pass a budget that doesn't force Americans to raid their 401k, cancel vacations, or go to the pawn shop just to pay for skyrocketing premiums. In my state alone, more than 4 million people will feel the financial crunch from these higher premium costs, and they'll feel it each and every month. A quarter of the Americans facing higher premiums have a chronic illness they're managing, and these price spikes will also put 1.6 million children at risk of losing essential health care. How can any Republican claim to be a champion of small businesses and entrepreneurs when 3.3 million small business owners and self-employed workers would see premiums skyrocket? That will cripple startups and handcuff mom and pop shops across America. Budgets reflect values and priorities, and Republicans chose a spending plan that guts health care and lavishes the wealthy in big corporations, and that's the Republicans' choice that they must live with. But Democrats stand ready to pass a funding bill that cancels the cruel Republican spending cuts, lowers costs for everyone, and saves the health care coverage of millions of Americans. That's what Democrats fight for, and we will not support this Republican spending plan that drags families further into the health care crisis created by Republicans. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Reserve.
The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized to control the time for the majority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. Kim.
The gentlelady from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, history has shown that government shutdowns accomplish nothing. The last major shutdown cost our economy $11 billion, delayed wages for federal workers, and disrupted businesses that hardworking Americans rely on. This isn't a partisan issue. Keeping our government open means protecting service members, honoring veterans, supporting mothers and infants, keeping our borders secure, and helping small businesses access the loans they need. As we approach the government funding deadline, I support this clean, short-term continuing resolution. It prevents a costly shutdown, preserves progress on appropriations, and gives Congress time to finish the job responsibly. We were not sent here to play political games with people's livelihoods. A shutdown doesn't score points. It only hurts those we serve. So I urge my colleagues to do the right thing and put the American people first and support this measure. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
I remind the gentlelady that in her state, the premiums will go up $3,300, and in her district, premiums will go up $3,300. In her state, 2.4 million people will lose their health care. I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, the distinguished ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Mr. Pallone.
The gentleman is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank our ranking member, Mr. Laura. I'm opposed to this bill. President Trump and congressional Republicans have created a health care crisis and waged a war on the American health care system. On the 4th of July, President Trump celebrated our nation's birthday by signing Republicans' big ugly bill into law, cutting more than $1 trillion from our health care system. And you can't cut $1 trillion without creating devastating consequences for our constituents. Their new law will cruelly take health care coverage away from 15 million Americans. And we're already seeing the chaotic impacts of their actions. Just 2 months after enactment of the big ugly bill, we're hearing from hospitals, clinics, and nursing homes across the country that are being forced to close their doors and cut services. St. Mary's Sacred Heart Hospital in Livonia, Georgia, recently announced it will shut down its maternity unit next month, and they pointed to, I quote, recent congressional cuts to Medicaid as the reason for the closure. In rural Virginia, August Medical Group is closing an urgent care and 2 primary care clinics, citing their, quote, ongoing response to Republican health care cuts. And this is only going to get worse. Congressional Republicans are also taking away tax credits that help millions of Americans afford their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. Thanks to enhanced tax credits included in the Inflation Reduction Act, a record 24 million Americans have coverage through the ACA marketplaces. But Republicans refuse to extend these tax credits for middle-class Americans in their big ugly bill, and if we don't act now, millions of Americans are going to be hit with huge premiums for the upcoming year. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has estimated that these premium increases will lead to 4.2 million Americans losing their health insurance. Now, Trump and congressional Republicans had no problem giving their billionaire friends tax breaks in their big ugly bill, but they refused to extend tax credits that make health care more affordable for millions of middle-class families. This is an outrage. We can't allow this to happen. Democrats believe we must address this health care crisis before millions of people lose their health coverage, see their costs spike, and their hospitals close. So I call on my Republican colleagues to join us in ending the chaos. This has to be addressed in the spending bill. And it doesn't. The Republican spending bill does not address the health care crisis, and for that reason, I am opposed. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Reserve.
The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, the distinguished gentleman and chairman of the Budget Committee from Texas, Mr. Arrington.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I thank the chairman and commend Mr. Cole for his commitment to controlling cost in the stewardship of taxpayers' hard-earned treasure. Meanwhile, my Democrat colleagues are demanding an audacious $1.4 trillion in new spending, or they will shut the people's government down. Well, Chairman Cole, we should let the people know what that $1.4 trillion includes. It would extend a failed and what they called temporary COVID tax credit that went to people making $600,000 because there was no income limit. CBO said there were 4.5 million phantom enrollees. That's fraud in Plainview, Texas. CMS said 2.3 million people with this temporary COVID tax credit who were ineligible received the credit, tens of billions of dollars in waste and fraud, and this is what they demand, or they will shut the government down. They also want to remove safeguards that we recently put in important safety net programs. Safeguards against what? People who are ineligible for receiving these social services, people who are in this country illegally from receiving taxpayer-funded services, and people who are able to work but refuse to work. That is the sum of the people who should not receive the hard-earned taxpayer-funded services. And those are the measures to root out waste, fraud, and abuse that they want to rip away so that we waste more of our tax dollars and continue on this slippery slope of bankrupting our country. Mr. Speaker, this is the party whose failed policies of tax, regulation, borrowing, and unbridled spending gave us the worst cost of living crisis in the last half century. I urge my colleagues to reject their demands, support Chairman Cole and the appropriators in this CR so we can work responsibly to fund the people's government and avoid a costly and disruptive shutdown. I yield.
The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
I reserve, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Speaker, I remind the gentleman from Texas that In his district, premiums will go up $430, so he'll have to explain that to his constituents. And in the state, 1.6 million people will be jettisoned from their health care. Explain that as well. I now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, the distinguished ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Neal.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 3 minutes.
Ask for permission to revise and extend my remarks. So let's look at the numbers. 15 million people are about to be kicked off their health insurance because of the big, ugly law. 24 million Americans are going to pay higher premiums. In some cases, up to 75%. I'm in opposition to this Republican plan because they'd rather shut down the government than bring costs down for the American people. Everything costs more. Unemployment's on the rise, and it's only going to get worse because of their health care premiums rising by up to 75%. So let's say it again. Republicans would rather shut down the government than bring down health care costs. 2 months ago, they found it possible to permanently extend tax cuts for the super wealthy, the biggest companies that were all scheduled to expire. They've turned their backs on the American people, but they found time once again to cut taxes for people at the very top. My friend, the budget chairman, he said before Democrats have added to the debt. Is there anybody on the side right now that's willing to stand up and say that in 2017 they didn't borrow $2.3 trillion for their tax cut? That's what I thought. Is there anybody willing to say that they didn't add $4 trillion to the debt with the last measure they passed called the Big Ugly Bill? Trillions of dollars being borrowed for a tax cut, and the bill is so popular, what they did with that legislation, it's so popular at the White House right now, they're trying to figure out how to rebrand it. We've already branded it. It's the Big Ugly Bill that is going to penalize middle-class Americans. The highest health care premium increases in 15 years. Prices are up, unemployment's rising, and the Trump economy with their tariffs are failing the American people who need it most. This morning, Democrats are not going to be party to these attacks on the American people. We have a simple plan here. Let's extend these health care benefits. We can move on to the next legislative business in terms of the regular order. The American people know this morning Democrats have their backs, and we intend to defend their health insurance plans. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The gentlelady is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, the distinguished gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Moore.
The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, this debate about keeping the government open is not just an academic debate. I've been here about 8 months. Before that, for about 10 years, I had the opportunity to write budgets for our state of North Carolina and our state legislature, where we showed how you can lower taxes, cut regulations, and turn things around, which we've done successfully. So I'm new in this game here in Washington. But I want to talk about something that's very important to my home state, and that is disaster relief after Hurricane Helene, which has been almost a year ago when that happened, and the ongoing efforts that are happening right now. And I want my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to hear this very loudly and clearly. If the government is shut down, those relief efforts, which are vital to my state, vital to other states, including California, that are dealing with cleaning up from disasters, vital to making sure that those things continue. If we shut this government down, those efforts will stop. That is malpractice. We cannot do that. And I'm reminded, and I'm going to give a shout out to Chairman Cole here. Back before I was a member last year, we came up with a delegation from North Carolina. We met with the chairman, other members of the Appropriation Committee, and very proud of the way that they, on a bipartisan basis, funded that initial tranche of relief for our state. And then we've done additional work. But we need to make sure that the
gentleman is recognized.
We need to continue the efforts to make sure that we rebuild in Western North Carolina and any other part of the country that's been impacted. So my request to my friends on the other side of the aisle, there's time to debate all of these other issues as this appropriations bill passes through the process. But this CR simply gives additional time to work through this, and will make sure that these disaster relief efforts continue unabated. This is important. We owe it to the people of my district, of my state, and frankly to everyone in this nation. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
I reserve, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
I want to remind the gentleman from North Carolina that I think his constituents are just going to be very unhappy about an additional almost $600 in increased costs for their health care premiums, and almost 652,000 people in his state will be jettisoned from health care. Mr. Speaker, this bill is less than the Americans deserve, and we need to address the cost of living crisis, ensure this country has a high quality of affordable health care. The Republican proposal before us today does neither of those things. For this reason, at the appropriate time, I will offer a motion to recommit this bill back to committee. If the House rules permitted, I would have offered the motion with an important amendment to this bill. My amendment would allow the House to vote on the funding proposal that myself and Senator Murray introduced in each chamber yesterday and would gain overwhelmingly bipartisan support. I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record the text of this amendment, and I hope my colleagues will join me in voting for the motion to recommit. I reserve.
Without objection, the gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I will reserve, but I am also prepared to close.
The gentlelady is prepared to close and reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I advise my friend, the gentlelady, I'm also prepared to close.
The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Let me just recall what I said early on in my comments. My Republican colleagues have once again chosen a bipartisan route. There was a consensus amongst the people who, in fact, deal with the appropriations process on both sides of the aisle. And we achieved consensus on the three bills in terms of the allocations and the top lines, and we said, yes, we are going to move forward in a bipartisan way to deal with those bills. There was also the consensus on a bipartisan CR. Lo and behold, no conversations with Democrats on a continuing resolution. As a matter of fact, if I can quote the President of the United States, he said, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time to talk with Jeffries and Schumer. The President said that. In addition to which, he has told Republicans, he said, pass this Republican continuing resolution, jam it down the Democrats' throat. That's the direction that the President would like to take us. He would like to take us to a shutdown, and the Republican leadership and this House has taken this partisan route. Democrats have been overwhelmingly interested in sitting down and talking about how we keep the government open. The fact of the matter is, the issues that are on the table here in this effort that are critically important, yes, are health care issues. And what are we fighting against? We're not going to support a partisan Republican bill that guts health care for the American people. And when they continue to want to say that the issues that we bring up are not germane to this bill, it really is a fallacy. That is the fallacy, because 67 pages of the 91 in this continuing resolution deal with health care extensions one way or another, whether they're for veterans, whether they're for others. That is what's in there. So it's absolutely germane that what we talk about is how they have slashed Medicaid of the largest cut in history, and 15 million people are going to lose their health care, and how they raise the premiums for for co-pays and deductibles. And I am happy to share with all of my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans, how much increase that is going to cost to their constituents in their district. And it's also going to tell them how many people in their state are going to lose that health care coverage that they have. It is in black and white, and it's there, and the people of their districts and their communities are going to know all about it. They set in motion $536 billion in cuts to Medicare. And, you know, as the ranking member on the Labor, Health, Human Services, and Education Subcommittee, I have watched them shut off the funding for medical research, including for kids with cancer, vaccines, and public health. This is a partisan Republican bill that guts health care, increases health care costs for the American people, allows the continuation of an unelected official to steal the money that both Democrats and Republicans in this House and in the Senate have moved forward on to meet the needs of the American people. That has to stop. And that is, in fact, the reason why Democrats are opposed to this continuing resolution. And they are foursquare for keeping the government open, but dealing with the needs of the American people. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New York, the distinguished Democratic leader, Mr. Jeffries.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the distinguished gentlelady from the great state of Connecticut for her leadership and for yielding as we debate this partisan, reckless Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people. I rise today in strong opposition to legislation that continues the relentless Republican attack on the health care of the American people. What we've seen throughout this year, notwithstanding Republican promises to lower the high cost of living, which Republicans promised to do on day one of the Trump presidency, but we know costs aren't going down. Here in the United States of America, they continue to go up. Inflation is going up. Life is becoming more expensive for the American people, in part as a result of Donald Trump's tariffs that House Republicans continue to rubber stamp. Democrats recognize that the cost of living in the United States of America is far too high. We have to fix our broken healthcare system, and we also have to clean up corruption in this town so that we don't have a government of the elites, by the elites, and for the elites. We deserve a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's why we oppose this reckless Republican spending bill. Republican assault on health care has been relentless. Largest cut to Medicaid in American history. Millions of Americans losing their health care as a result of the Republican one big ugly bill. Hungry children have had food stolen from their mouths as a result of the one big ugly bill. That is going to make them vulnerable to sickness, illness, and disease. And all of this was done so that Republicans could reward your billionaire donors with massive tax breaks. In addition to the unprecedented assault on Medicaid, as a result of the Republican one big ugly bill, the American people are confronting the possibility that Medicare could be cut by $536 billion this year, the largest cut to Medicare in American history, as a result of what Republicans have done as part of their relentless assault on the health care of the American people. Premiums, copays, and deductibles are skyrocketing. Over the next few weeks, tens of millions of Americans are about to confront dramatic increases in their health care. Thousands of dollars, in some cases, tens of thousands of dollars in additional expense per year because of what Republicans have unleashed on the American people as part of this unprecedented assault on health care. Heard earlier today some of my colleagues on the Republican side saying that the health care issue was not germane, that we're raising issues around Medicaid or the Affordable Care Act, or increases in premiums, copays, and deductibles, or the fact that Republicans are dramatically ending medical research in the United States of America, including as it relates to research for children with cancer. Who does that? And the fact that all across this country, as a result of actions Republicans have taken and are continuing to take in targeting the health care of the American people, hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health clinics are closing, including in all of your districts and throughout rural America. So don't come and argue to us that these issues are not germane. Let me tell you what's germane. Protecting the health care of the American people is germane, and that's what Democrats are doing in fighting back against this partisan Republican spending bill. There is an alternative. It's been introduced by Senator Patty Murray and Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, supported by Democrats in the House and the Senate. It keeps the government open. It allows for a bipartisan negotiation as it relates to a spending bill that would actually meet the needs of the American people in terms of their health, their public safety, and their economic well-being, to actually try and make progress on lowering costs in America, which you promised to do as Republicans, Mr. Speaker, and failed to do. That's the legislation that we should be taking up. Republicans know that this partisan, reckless, dirty spending bill is dead on arrival in the United States Senate. And yet Republicans continue to refuse to even discuss protecting the health care of the American people in the face of a relentless Republican assault that will actually harm people and cause Americans, children, families, seniors, veterans to lose their lives. We have a choice to make here in the House of Representatives. It appears that Republicans believe that health care should simply be a privilege available only to the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. We strongly disagree. Access to high-quality, affordable health care is a right, and Democrats are on the floor of the House of Representatives vindicating that right at all times. And that's why we're voting no. Some have suggested that our principled opposition to the partisan Republican spending bill may result in government funding lapsing. But we've heard all year how Republicans have a mandate, how Republicans have the presidency, how Republicans control the House, how Republicans control the Senate. Well, if that in fact is the case, as is the moment, temporarily, Republicans will own a government shutdown. Period, full stop. It's the Republican shutdown. We're fighting for the health care of the American people. We will do that today. We will do that tomorrow. We will do that next week. We will do that next month. We will do that this year. We will do that next year. We will do that at all times. We're standing up for the health care of the American people. Cancel the cuts. Lower the costs. Save your health care.
The gentleman yields. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Speaker, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That was quite an unconventional close. Normally, when you close, you're the last speaker. So I regret that, but I'm happy to always hear from my good friend, the distinguished minority leader. But that's an unusual move. And I would just ask my friends in the future, the gentleman has the right to speak, and the 1 minute is the 1 minute, and I respect that. Just please be here in time to do it before we close. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time.
The House will be in order.
The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The House will be in order.
The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I won't take the 18 minutes that I have. I don't think I need it because the facts here are pretty clear. At the beginning of this process, I was asked to produce a clean bill for a limited period of time by my colleagues on the other side. That's what they asked to do, so that we could continue negotiations on a package of 3 bills, which are going well quite now and are happening. Then, all of a sudden, we have extraneous demands for things unrelated to the day-to-day operation of the government. With all due respect, and I think additional negotiations on those topics could happen. I think the Majority Leader of the United States Senate actually signaled they could happen, but not attached to this particular bill. This is what my friends on the other side asked for. A clean bill, no partisan riders, no tricks, no things. And give it to us for a short period. I was told by my distinguished friend in the United States Senate, Senator Murray, oh no, we don't want to go all the way to January like the Trump administration does. We just want to go into November. I said, great, I actually agree with you. I think we should keep this thing moving. But the thing to keep moving is the appropriations bills that fund the government. Now, if my friends want to shut the government down, they have every right to do so. You might do it today. You certainly have the power of the United States Senate to do that. But rest assured, you're doing exactly what Republicans did in 2013, and it did not work for them. They tied something unrelated to spending, Obamacare, and shut down the government. That was the wrong thing to do then. I said it was the wrong thing to do, and it was. You're doing the same thing now. It's nothing else. Now, if you want to have negotiations on these other topics, they're important topics, and they ought to be negotiated. But what's happening is not some cut that's in this bill. We're not cutting anything. A measure that my friends, and was passed on a bipartisan basis, as I recall, ran out. It's running out. Okay, we should probably talk about that. You don't do it on a CR. This is a manufactured crisis. You got exactly what you asked for. You asked for a clean CR. You got a clean CR. You asked for a limited amount of time. You got a limited amount of time. You asked for negotiations on the remaining 3 bills. Those negotiations are underway, and that's what this committee should be focused on. And that's all we're doing today, Mr. Speaker, is buying the time that we all need to finish a process that we're all trying to restore and we think is broken. Now we have people dropping things out of the blue that were never intended to be a CR to try and create a sense of crisis and drama. If you think that moves us in the right direction, I disagree. I think that moves us in the wrong direction. I think keeping the government open for the American people and negotiating in good faith on bills where we are close to getting done and moving it through regular order is the right thing to do. I think provoking a government shutdown is the wrong thing to do. If you disagree, vote no. Take your privilege and shut down the government of the United States, something you have repeatedly condemned Republicans for when they did it, and rightly condemned them. But you're doing the same thing, and you know it. You absolutely know it. So, you want to shut down the government today? Fine. We'll give the United States Senate the same opportunity if we vote to keep it open. And if they want to shut it down, that's up to them. But we are at the table, ready to negotiate. We're negotiating on the 3 bills we agreed to negotiate on right now. That's the work of the Appropriations Committee, not this. And that's what the CR would deal with. So, my friends, when I give you what you asked for and you decide that's not acceptable and you change it afterwards and you drop unrelated items in, that's up to you. But let's not have any pretense about what's going on here. It's political theater. political theater. That's all it is. But you're doing it at the risk of shutting down the government of the United States. So, Mr. Speaker, I am very proud to vote for this CR. I'm proud to work with my friends on the bills we were supposed to work with. I hope we can reach agreement and bring those bills to the floor in short order. And with that, I urge a yes on the motion in front of us, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. Members will be reminded to address the remarks to the chair. All time for debate has expired, and pursuant to House Resolution 722, the previous question is ordered on the bill. The question is on engrossment and a third reading of the bill. All of those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Connecticut seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Laurel of Connecticut moves to recommit the bill H.R. 5371 to the Committee on Appropriations.
Pursuant to Clause 2 Bravo of Rule 19, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The motion is not agreed to.
Mr. Speaker,
The gentlelady from Connecticut is
on that I
recognized.
request the yeas and nays.
The gentlelady requests that yeas and nays are requested. Those in favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number of those having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by 5-minute votes on passage of the bill, if ordered, and adoption of the House Resolution 719. This is a 15-minute vote.
On this bill, the yeas are 210, the nays are 218. The motion is not adopted. The question is on the passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The bill is passed without objection. Motion.
Mr. Speaker, on that,
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Connecticut seek recognition?
Speaker, on that, I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays have been requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having arisen. The yeas and nays are ordered. Members record their vote by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 217, the nays are 212. The bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is on the vote and the adoption. Resolution 719, on which the yeas and nays are orders. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 719, resolution honoring the life and legacy of Charles Charlie James Kirk.
Question is on the adoption resolution. Members record their vote by electronic device. It's a 5-minute vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 310, the nays are 58. Voting present are 38. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Side or purposes, the gentleman from Oklahoma seek to be recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I offer a privileged resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 747, resolved that the clerk of the House of Representatives requests the Senate to return to the House the bill, H.R. 3426, entitled, to amend Title 40 United States Code to limit the construction of new courthouses under certain circumstances and for other purposes.
Without objection, the resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. House will be in order. For what purposes the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek to be recognized?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent on behalf of the Pennsylvania delegation to speak out of order.
Without objection.
On Wednesday, September 17, in York County, our community suffered an unimaginable tragedy. Members of the Northern York County Regional Police Department and the York County Sheriff's Office were fired upon as they entered a home while attempting to serve a warrant relative to a stalking incident in North Cador's Township. 3 officers, Sergeant Cody Becker, Detective Mark Baker, and Detective Isaiah Emmenheiser were killed in the line of duty. 2 other officers, one from the Northern York County Regional Police Department and one York County Deputy Sheriff, were wounded and remain in the hospital. We pray for their swift and complete recovery. Mr. Speaker, this horrific and senseless act of violence has devastated the York County community. Hearts are broken. 3 brave public servants who answered the call to protect and defend did not return home to their loved ones at the end of their shift. To the families, loved ones, friends, and colleagues of these fallen heroes, we extend our deepest, deepest sympathy. We grieve with you, and the entire community shares in your grief. May we all keep the families of the fallen officers of the department, the York County Sheriff's Office, and all law enforcement officers in our hearts and in our prayers. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield some time to Congressman Perry.
I thank the gentleman from Lancaster County. And Mr. Speaker, the Psalms tell us that the Lord is closest to the brokenhearted, and we are brokenhearted on this day for the loss of these officers. Mr. Speaker, every day across America as we go about our lives, every day and every night, there are men and women that put on the uniform to keep our community safe. And they never know when they leave home, kiss their wife, their husband, their children goodbye, whether that's the last day or not. And it's a burden that most of us will never recognize, can't understand, will never experience. But we live in a wonderful country because of the people that are willing to risk their lives and run to the danger. Run to the danger. Mr. Speaker, these brave individuals, the finest in America, certainly the finest in York County, gave their last full measure in support of the safety of their community and our country. We are heartbroken, and we pray for them. We pray for the departments. We pray for their families. We pray
for our community, and we hold them up and we acknowledge their sacrifice on our behalf. I thank the gentleman from Lancaster and the whole Pennsylvania delegation, the whole House, for your attention to this matter. We have to do better. We have to deal with these things successfully, and we have to continue to honor those who stand in the way of evil every day so that we can remain free. And I yield the balance to the gentleman.
I thank the gentleman for his words. Mr. Speaker, I ask that everyone rise and that the House observe a moment of silence to honor the memory of Sergeant Cody Becker, Detective Mark Baker, and Detective Isaiah Emmenheiser. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Ready? The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek to be recognized?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize and honor the retirement of Manuel Hart, chairman of the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe. Chairman Hart has faithfully served his people for more than a decade, leading with vision, humility, and an unwavering commitment to protecting the tribe's sovereignty and making life better for his community. Raised by his grandfather, he learned the Ute language and carried forward the traditions of his people with pride. Throughout his tenure, he has championed the tribe's water rights and worked to safeguard this critical resource for future generations. He's promoted education and culture and has worked tirelessly to diversify the Ute Mountain Ute economy through agriculture and business development. Chairman Hart has been a strong voice for tribal sovereignty, reminding us that the rights of tribal members as citizens of both their tribe and the United States must always be respected. On behalf of Colorado's 3rd District, I thank Chairman Manuel Hart for his decades of leadership and extend my best wishes to him in retirement. His service leaves a legacy that will endure for years to come. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek to be recognized? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to discuss an issue that affects men of all ages, races, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Prostate cancer. Just last week, I introduced a resolution designating September as Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. As co-chair of the Bipartisan Men's Health Caucus, this issue is close to my heart. Every year, the Black community is disproportionately affected by prostate cancer. Specifically, Black men are twice as likely to die from prostate cancer as our white counterparts. This alarming trend highlights an urgent need for action. To address the disparities in prostate cancer outcomes, we must ensure at-risk populations have access to prevention, early detection, and treatment options. This disease does not have to be a death sentence, and this disparity isn't written in stone. We have the tools to close that gap. Together, we can increase awareness through campaigns like Prostate Cancer Awareness Month and Beat the Prostate Cancer once and for all. Together, let's end this scourge in our community. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek to be recognized? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to reflect on my very recent visit to Israel. It was a humbling journey through the Holy Land, where the history and resilience of the Israeli people left a deep impression. I stood inside Jerusalem's Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a profound moment for me as a Christian. I was grateful to have met Prime Minister Netanyahu with Israel's President Herzog and our own Ambassador Mike Huckabee. Each visit afforded a deeper understanding of the enduring bond between our nations. Our delegation visited the site of the Nova Music Festival, where Hamas terrorists carried out one of the most horrific attacks on October 7th. The trip was both sobering and inspiring. It reaffirmed my conviction to stand with the people of Israel whilst working toward the goal of a more peaceful Middle East. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek to be recognized?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I quote, "Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power by using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted for censorship," end quote. These are not my words. These are the words of Brendan Carr, the current FCC chairman. This week, Chairman Carr called for Jimmy Kimmel's show to be canceled for using that very same satire. Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, suppression of free speech. I don't see this administration saying anything about limiting the free speech on Fox or OAN or Newsmax. Free speech is okay if you agree with it, but if it disagrees with you, then out it goes. That's the way it is in Putin's Russia, in Kim Jong-un's North Korea. That's the way it is in China and Hungary and Iran. But that's not America. America believes in something good and greater: free speech, free thought, free practice of religion. When we silence American voices, we slide every day toward the very regimes that we say we are fighting.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek to be recognized?
I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
1 year ago, Western North Carolina was slammed by the worst storm to ever hit our region. To many across the country, we thought that this might have just been another segment on nightly news programs or an article in our local paper. But for those of us who call Western North Carolina home, it meant so much more. In our mountain communities, waters crested above 30 feet. Winds peaked at over 100 miles an hour. 1,500 landslides destroyed hundreds of homes in many communities. Over 1,300 roads were blocked by damage and debris. 1.2 million citizens were left without power. 108 North Carolinians lost their lives. Over the last year, our mountain communities have overcome unimaginable obstacles with grit and determination. I couldn't be prouder that as a community, we've come back together, not as individuals, but as neighbors, friends, and family. Rebuilding hasn't been easy, but very few things that are worth doing are easy. Come Helene or high water, Western North Carolina will rebuild, and I am so proud of the resiliency of the people of the mountains. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The chair will receive a message.
Speaker, a message from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has passed without amendment H.R. 2483, an act to reauthorize certain programs that provide for opioid use disorder prevention, treatment, and recovery, and for other purposes.
Gentleman from California for what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have giants in San Diego. I rise today to congratulate one of them, Mr. Tom Fetter, who is being honored as Mr. San Diego by the San Diego Rotary. A lifelong San Diegan, Tom was born in 1934 and grew up in Point Loma. In 1957, he married his beautiful wife, Jane, a La Joyan. Tom served in the Army before beginning a long and successful business career in San Diego. Tom has had community service always, and it's been at the center of his and Jane's lives. Tom has spent more than 5 decades building up the community serving on the leading boards of the San Diego's institutions, which include the San Diego Yacht Club, the Bishop School, the Fleet Science Center, the San Diego Zoo, the USD School of Law, the San Diego History Center. Notably, Tom was Commodore of the San Diego Yacht Club during its defense of the America's Cup in 1994. And his service to the San Diego Zoo is especially meaningful, as his father served as the zoo's board chairman in the 1960s. Despite his many achievements, Tom considers his family to be his greatest success, and they are a great blessing to San Diego. Tom, thank you for everything you've done for San Diego, and congratulations again on this prestigious honor. It's very well deserved. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to address the body for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognize an inspiring moment in our community. The Spokane Impact's first home match this past Saturday at the Hub Sports Complex in Liberty Lake. The Spokane Impact is one of the founding teams of the Inspire Soccer League, the first ever national soccer league created specifically for athletes with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Launched by Project Inspire, this league is about more than just soccer. It's about bringing people together from all walks of life and making sure that everyone has a chance to experience the joy and connection of sports. Too often, athletes with special needs are left without access to the kinds of opportunities so many take for granted. Real teams, real competition, and real crowds cheering that on. This is an exciting new effort. There is so much going on with soccer in Spokane and across the country with the launch of our USL team and the coming World Cup, and I'm so proud that this has taken place. And I'd like to give a special shout out, Mr. Speaker, to the team's manager, Anna McCoy, who's doing a wonderful job in her new role. And with that, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Vermont seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, our nation is in crisis. We are in a very dark place, and Americans are scared, and they want to see a way forward. And we all need to start with ourselves. This morning I sat and I lit a candle, and I thought about the anguish and suffering of Representative Melissa Hortman's 2 children as they try to cope with the assassination of their mom and dad. Then I sat and I thought of the pain and the torment of Charlie Kirk's family as they try to cope with the killing of their dad. Today, Mr. Speaker, I'm inviting Americans across the nation to do the same, to sit for a few minutes in the pain of these 2 families. And if you can feel compassion for one family and not the other, that should tell you the work that you need to do, the work that we all need to do. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to thank the Colorado Springs Chamber of Commerce for hosting the Chamber fly-in to Washington, D.C. this week. Over 90 members of the Chamber from the aerospace and defense, energy, housing, and community development sectors, among others, made the journey to our nation's capital. I had the opportunity to meet with several of these business leaders individually, and we discussed how we can work together to lower regulations, support businesses, and keep jobs in our community. Many of these business leaders are the reason why the Pikes Peak region is becoming one of the economic titans of the West. Relationships are the most important part of the legislative process, and I look forward to continuing to work together with these and every business leader in the 5th Congressional District to continue to grow our thriving community. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purposes, the gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition?
Revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor Women of Toledo. This remarkably dynamic organization is celebrating 10 productive years of advancing good works, opportunity, sorority, and leadership in Northwestern Ohio. What began as a simple focus group has grown into a vibrant hub connecting thousands of women and girls to mentorship, education, resources to build lives forward. Through initiatives like Her Hub, which champions women-owned businesses, and Girls Hub, which inspires our next generation of leaders in science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, Women of Toledo is shaping the future of our community. Bravo! Their story is a testament to the power of good people, good women, their vision, their persistence. From coffee shop conversations to packed ballrooms, they have built a movement rooted in e pluribus unum, women of various heritages working together for community betterment. Women of Toledo has forged partnerships with business, not-for-profits, and neighborhoods who believe that when women rise, our entire community rises. Congratulations, Women of Toledo, and I yield back.
For what purposes, the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Actually, for the last 2 days, it's been remarkable, led by Foreign Affairs Chairman Brian Mast. We have actually met for nearly 36 hours straight to pass a State Department Authorization Act. And I'm very grateful that last night, indeed, a very historic step was taken as the people of the United States showed their love and affection for the people of the Republic of Georgia. A amendment was passed that provides for no recognition of the illegitimate Georgian Dream government that has seized power in a rigged election in Georgia on October 26, 2024. And so we now have a resolution or amendment that calls for non-recognition. And I'm so grateful for my colleagues who joined in supporting that resolution. Indeed, as indication that what has been done is positive. The Speaker of the Parliament of Georgia, Shalva Papuashvili, has denounced this legislation, and the unintended consequence, he reveals that the people of Georgia want to live in fairness and freedom. Additionally, today, the United Kingdom has passed legislation to block recognition. With this, we conclude that Charlie and Erica Kirk are making a difference for God, family, and country.
For what purposes, gentlemen from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under the process of this country of drawing maps for representation, it's done every 10 years, immediately following a census. We have this wave this year of states setting out to redraw maps mid-decade, mid-census, without even any new census data. This is done for partisan purposes. My home state of California, for example, we have a commission that is supposed to draw the maps, not in the grubby hands of legislators with an eraser and ink. It's supposed to be done by independent. The voters of California affirmed 3 different occasions by their vote on the ballot that they don't want it being done by legislators. We see a scheme going on right now to take that away from the voters and put it back in the hands of the legislators. And so here's one of the results right here. This is the top of California meets Oregon and Nevada. That corner there, Modoc County, and it sounds as rural as the name Modoc implies, is now being linked all the way down here to the north half of the Golden Gate Bridge in Marin County. This is the area here where they've had wolves introduced that are devouring the wildlife and the farmers and ranchers' livestock up there by the people down here that think it's a really good idea. So they're not going to have any voice as balance to talk about and talk in this place about how they're being devastated by policies coming from the urban areas. And that's what's known as Proposition 50. They should vote no on that in California and bring ballots back, leave the balance in place instead of partisan lines. I yield back.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, is recognized for 60 minutes as a designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise, and I rise now to proudly yield time to a person with great honor and integrity, a member of this Congress who has been on the right side of righteousness, a member of this Congress who stands for those who are among the least, the last, and the lost. She hails from the 14th Congressional District in the great state of New York, the Honorable Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. I yield to her such time as she may consume.
I thank Gentleman Representative Green for his graciousness. Today, the Republican House Majority brought to the floor a resolution honoring, quote, honoring the life and legacy of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk's assassination was a horrific and vile attack and incident of political violence. And condemning the depravity of Kirk's brutal murder is a straightforward matter, one that is especially important to help stabilize an increasingly unsafe and volatile political environment where everyday people feel more at risk. We can deeply disagree and come together as a country to denounce the horror of this killing. And it is not a license for the abuse of power and whitewashing of American history. Today's resolution only underscores the majority's recklessness by choosing to author this condemnation and honoring on a purely partisan basis, instead of uniting Congress in this tragedy with one of the many bipartisan options to condemn political violence and Kirk's murder, as we did with the late Melissa Hortman. Instead, the majority proceeded with a resolution that brings great pain to the millions of Americans who endured segregation, Jim Crow, and the legacy of bigotry today. We should be clear about who Charlie Kirk was. A man who believed that the Civil Rights Act that granted Black Americans the right to vote was a mistake. Who, after the violent attack on Paul Pelosi, claimed that, quote, some amazing patriot, unquote, should bail out his brutal assailant. And accused Jews of controlling, quote, not just the colleges, it's the nonprofits, it's the movies, it's Hollywood, it's all of it, unquote. His rhetoric and beliefs were ignorant, uneducated, and sought to disenfranchise millions of Americans, far from the working, quote, working tirelessly to promote unity, unquote, asserted by the majority in this resolution. It is equally important that Congress does unite to reject the government's attempt to weaponize this moment into an all-out assault on free speech across the country, all in the name of Charlie Kirk. President Trump and the FCC are now cynically threatening to shut down ABC and any outlets who give airtime to the administration's political critics. This is a disgusting attack on the American people and the very First Amendment rights that define us as a country. It is also the ABC Corporation's responsibility to refuse to embolden and participate in this corruption and escalation of censorship. We continue to pray for Mr. Kirk's family and loved ones in the wake of this terrible act. I am thinking especially of his children and his wife, whose grief cannot be measured. And with that, I yield back to the gentleman.
I bid the lady good day and would proceed now, Mr. Speaker. Again, and still I rise. And I rise today, Mr. Speaker, with the notion in mind that what I have stood for, I still stand for. What I have stood for, I still stand for. It wasn't that long ago, Mr. Speaker, that I stood right over to my right, the seat next to the aisle. And Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States of America here for a joint session of Congress, President of the United States of America indicated that he had a mandate. I, with a degree of spontaneity, Mr. Speaker, right over there, second seat from the aisle, collected my portable items, about to make my departure, traverse up to the doors and make my exit as a means of protesting what the President was saying. But, Mr. Speaker, as I did this, I became overwhelmed with just the notion that something was going to happen very ugly, and it would be something that would hurt people who are on Medicaid and Medicare. And I also brought up Social Security when I spoke, but these are the things that I was overwhelmed with. And as a result of being overwhelmed and understanding what was about to happen, knowing that the committee with jurisdiction over Medicaid had a mandate to cut more than $800 billion. Overwhelmed, Mr. Speaker, I did rise to my feet, and I did say to the President, you have no mandate to cut Medicaid. My colleagues across the aisle became very rambunctious and decided that what I was saying did not merit being heard, so they performed very loudly. I'm not angry with them. They performed loudly. And I wanted to make sure the President heard my statement. And I repeated myself and added Medicare and Social Security. My colleagues continued. I continued. I was evicted, and I was later on censured. Censured but not silenced. Yes, I stand today where I stood then. Censured but not silenced. I stand today where I stood then. It is best captured. Would you please bring the stand over, please, someone? It is best captured in this photo that depicts what occurred. Censured, not silenced. So I stand today where I stood then. And I stand today where I stood then because there is a CR that has been brought before this House. And if I had voted for that CR, I would legitimize what I stood against. I refuse to legitimize what I stood against when I said you don't have a mandate to cut Medicaid, Medicare, and I introduced Social Security into the equation. That's what this was about for me today. The question was whether I would stand where I stood then or whether I would now agree that what was done then is something that I condone now. I condemned what happened then. My mind has not changed. The people who will suffer will still suffer. Why would I now decide that I'm going to bless, if you will, condone a CR that continues what happened when my Republican colleagues did what they thought was right, I assume, and passed the legislation without the help of Democrats? Well, if you can pass the initial legislation without the help of Democrats, why do you want me to join in your CR? Pass this without my help. Censured, but not silenced. I stand now where I stood then. I went out and I addressed the press. I didn't go out to address the press. The press asked and appealed to me to come over. I was making my way to my home where I could watch the rest of the joint session of Congress. But I went over to the press and I said to them what I said to the President. I am on record. Why would I now decide that I somehow conclude that what was done to Medicaid and Medicare is somehow something that I would now condone? I have said, and I continue to say, this piece of legislation that was passed, not the CR, but the original legislation, the one big ugly steal of a bill, this piece of legislation, as it continues to develop, is going to hurt people on Medicaid. And if you live long enough, you're going to need Medicaid. Because if you live long enough, you're going to need some sort of long-term health care, if you're fortunate enough. And you're going to get that from Medicaid. I refuse to change my position. I stand now where I stood then. And I believe that what we are doing with the greatest cut in health care history to health care, the greatest cut in health care ever. And all we are trying to do as Democrats, or at least this one Democrat, I don't speak for the Democratic Party. I speak for myself and everybody who agrees with me. What we're trying to do is to protect Medicare. That's all that CR is about for me. It's about a lot of other things as well, but I'm trying to protect Medicare as I tried at the joint session of Congress. I'm going to stand where I stood then. And I'm proud to tell you that Democrats have produced some documents that encapsulate, that are terse but very much substantive in terms of what this appeal is all about. The style of it is, what are the elements of the Republican health care crisis? And there is a health care crisis. And the Democratic Party has passed this on to me. I want to give them full credit for it. I'm going to adopt it as my own, but I did not produce it. Says here, this is a part of the crisis. Slashing Medicaid with the largest cut in history. Well, I said that. I'm repeating myself. Some things bear repeating. Slashing Medicaid with the largest cut in history. I can't condone that. If I had voted for this CR, that's what I'd be doing. You passed it without my help before. Why would you expect me to support it now? I want to change that. I'm not a status quo politician. Next point. Dramatically raises premiums, co-pays, and deductibles for tens of millions of Americans. There are people who are living on the margins, barely capable of affording health care, and this legislation is going to make it impossible for some of them to afford health care. These premiums and co-pays and deductibles are going to go up for a good many people who can't afford them. We're trying to change that. Or I am. I support this. Goes on to say, forcing hospitals and community health centers across the nation to close. That is no joke. People are starting to see it. They're starting to express their consternation. They're starting to let the people know that somehow this must not happen. They want to change it. If they want to change it, why would I vote to continue it? I refuse to change my position. I stand now where I stood then. Goes on to indicate setting in motion $536 billion in cuts to Medicaid. $536 billion in cuts to Medicaid. Mr. Speaker, that sums it up. That sums it up. I stand now where I stood then. I am a liberated Democrat, unbought, unbossed, unafraid, Censured, not silenced. I stand for the people that I have been faithful to in my congressional district. I am going to be faithful to them to the very end, wherever and whenever that occurs. I stand for what is best to help them through these turbulent times and the crisis that the GOP healthcare initiatives have introduced to people who are in need of health care. I close with this, Mr. Speaker. In this, the richest country in the world, we cannot allow health care to become wealth care. We cannot allow health care to become wealth care. We also cannot allow health care to line the pockets of the wealthy. That's another form of wealth care. Health care to become wealth care for the wealthy. The cuts are going to line the pockets of the very wealthy in this country. That has been published. It has been accepted, it seems, by all or a good many, except me. I don't accept that. I refuse to allow health care to become wealth care and do it in the sense that it becomes the wealthy that benefit the most from the cuts that are taking place. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand now where I stood then, censured but not silenced. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., September 19th, 2025. I hereby designate the period from Friday, September 19th, 2025 through Sunday, September 28th, 2025 as a district work period under Clause 13 of Rule 1. Signed sincerely, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3, 2025, the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the House has just voted to pass a continuing resolution that is now going over to the Senate with the Democrat leader, Chuck Schumer, pledging that his caucus will be united against it, barreling us towards a potential government shutdown that would very much not be in the interest of anyone and would be terrible for the country as a whole. The minority leader in the Senate has not been abundantly clear as to what exactly he's looking for in order to avoid this outcome. After all, we're dealing with a so-called clean CR, which simply extends funding levels as they've been for quite some time now. Really not the way things should be done, by the way. But that's where we are and is the only proposal on the table for avoiding such a shutdown. I have a thought on how this whole terrible outcome can potentially be avoided in a way that would satisfy members on both sides of the aisle and keep the government open, which is to include in the continuing resolution language that will preserve the congressional maps in every state in the country as they existed at the time of the 2024 election. I have proposed legislation myself along those lines to stop this horrible redistricting war that we see playing out across the country that is bad for representative government, and is widely opposed by members of both the Democrat and Republican conference in the House. So that is my proposal, to avoid a shutdown, to give the minority leader, Chuck Schumer, in the Senate something that he can claim he delivered that would help members of the, at least, Democrat conference here in the House. We simply reach a deal where we say we're going to stop this redistricting war. We're not going to be upending maps in the middle of the decade. This could be done easily. It could be put into the continuing resolution that the House just sent over to the Senate. And here are the two main virtues of this proposal. Number one, the proposal is widely supported by the American people. 66% to 23%. The American people say we should not be engaging in redistricting mid-decade. That's according to a recent Noble Insights poll. By a 3-to-1 margin, Americans support the legislation that I have proposed, support the idea that we should not be throwing out congressional maps, upending districts, dissevering the connection between voters and their representatives in the middle of the decade. Not only do the American people support this proposal, but members of the House on both sides of the aisle do. How do we know that? Well, on the Democrat side, you just had a number of members of the House who announced their own bill to get rid of mid-decade redistricting. And on the Republican side, I have members come up to me every day saying that what I am proposing is the right thing for them, the right thing for their districts, the right thing for their states, and the right thing for the country. The only thing that is stopping us from moving forward on this common sense proposal is the refusal on the part of the Speaker of the House to put on the floor a piece of legislation that is widely supported by members of the House and by the American people. Well, the ball is now in the Senate's court when it comes to government funding. And I am absolutely opposed to a government shutdown. That's why I supported the stopgap funding measure today, even though I don't think it should have come to this. Now the Senate has an opportunity to negotiate a compromise that has to, by its very nature, be bipartisan, given the rules of the Senate, that will keep the House open. And I would submit that a way to do that, that would be in the interest of everyone here in this institution, would be to reach an agreement that keeps the government open, that provides us some runway to actually pass a budget, which we should have done a long time ago, and will stop this chaos of upending one district after another and state after state from cascading across the country. Mr. Speaker, I would like to provide an update on Proposition 50 that is set for a vote in California, otherwise known as Gavin Newsom's redistricting sham. This is a proposal by the governor to tear up the map drawn by California's independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, to abolish the redistricting commission that was put in place by the voters, and to impose a hyper-partisan map drawn by politicians without any input from the public as setting the new boundaries for congressional representation in California. It is an attempt to override what the voters have said 3 separate times in California, that redistricting should be done by an independent commission, and to move us back to the era of partisan gerrymandering. Now, as bad as this proposal is on its face, what's even worse is the cost of simply administering this special election. Because we're not supposed to be having an election right now. This is 2025, a non-election year. And in order to get this sham through, in order to reverse the will of the voters the governor needs to produce an artifact of voter approval. So they've come up with this fraudulent ballot measure that is designed to mislead voters and to confuse them into overturning what they had done before. And what's more, it's doing so in a way that relies upon not only voter fraud, confusing people, but also voter suppression, limiting voting opportunities. I've heard directly from the registrars of voters in my district saying that because they've thrown out all of the rules for elections in California, because they've condensed the timeline beyond anything we've ever seen, they're not able to have the polling place open that they'd like. They're having fewer voting centers. The typical places that they use for voting, they're not able to use because those places have already been booked. They're not able to get out the sort of notifications to voters that they usually do. The voter guide is not being mailed to voters when it should, and it's going to be a digital-only voter guide. So think about how perverse that is. They lie to voters on the description on the ballot as to what the initiative actually does, and then they withhold from them the voter guide that would actually give voters the text, the actual text of the initiative, and arguments from folks on both sides. So in order to conduct this impromptu, unscheduled, hyper-rushed special election where we're not supposed to be having an election at all in a way that suppresses the will of voters and suppresses voter participation, it is going to cost California voters nearly $300 million. That's right, 282 to be exact, $million is the cost of administering this election whose only purpose is to return California to the era of political gerrymandering. That is the only thing on the ballot. $282 million in taxpayer funding at a time when California has a massive budget deficit, when the governor has cut funding for foster kids in our state, saying we don't have enough money, but he has $282 million to return us to the era of political gerrymandering. At a time when the governor is refusing to fund Proposition 36, the initiative to restore appropriate consequences for retail theft and to get drug offenders access to treatment. It was passed by California voters overwhelmingly last year, nearly 70% of the vote, over Governor Newsom's opposition, and yet he's not funding it. He is again trying to ignore and overturn the will of voters. So much so that the Democrat mayor of San Jose called what Newsom is doing, quote, a joke. So he doesn't have the funds to keep California safe. He doesn't have the funds for foster kids. He's running a massive budget deficit. He's defaulted on a $20 billion loan that he took out from the federal government, forcing small businesses to pay it back themselves through a tax increase. Yet he somehow found $282 million in taxpayer funds to conduct a snap special election to hyper-gerrymander our state. It is one of the most disgraceful, if not the most disgraceful, acts of any elected official in modern California history. And you don't have to take my word for that. This scheme has provoked widespread, bipartisan opposition. Just today, the first chair of the California Independent Redistricting Commission, who is a registered Democrat, has an op-ed in Cal Matters saying that this is exactly the wrong thing to do. Former Governor Schwarzenegger came out a few days ago in strong opposition to Prop 50, calling it insane. Governor Schwarzenegger called Governor Newsom's scheme insane. He said this is getting rid of the democratic principles of California. He derided the fact that this was a map drawn by the politicians without any input from the people. Now, Governor Newsom is in the process of trying to mislead voters not only through his ballot description, but also through all kinds of campaign ads, with $10 million of funding that just came in from George Soros, with all of his favored special interests in Sacramento getting behind it, with commercials saying that this is actually preserving independent redistricting, when literally the entire point of the initiative is to throw out the map created by our independent redistricting and return power to the hands of partisan politicians. By the way, it has also come out that this map has been drawn in such a way as to provide new districts for the very politicians who drew the map to run in. The Speaker of the State Assembly and the President of the State Senate have been given their own special districts to run in for Congress if this map gets adopted, which is all the more reason why California voters have said on multiple occasions, we don't want politicians drawing maps. And indeed, the Constitution of California, in addition to saying that an independent commission draws the lines, specifically says that these sort of considerations, favoring a powerful politician, favoring an incumbent, drawing them in such a way as to give one person an edge or to have someone's home be in this district versus that one, that none of that is allowed under California's current constitution. But the way that this governor's redistricting sham has been drawn, it says that literally everything else in the Constitution is to be ignored. Every provision that provides for the protection for voters, that provides for fair districts, that keeps communities together in the process of drawing district lines, that says you cannot favor politicians or candidates in every way, that says you cannot consider partisan outcomes, all of that is completely blown up by this initiative. It says partisan gerrymandering is the new law of the land in California, the highest law of the land. Notwithstanding, it says anything else that exists in our state's constitution. So, Mr. Speaker, the governor is trying to stack the deck in every way he can against the people of California, to try to overturn their will, to try to confuse them, to fool them, to mislead them, to suppress their opportunity to participate, so that he gets more power and they lose power. And the task for those who care about good government, for those who care about our democracy in California, for people of decency on all sides of the aisle, is simply to make sure that folks understand the truth over these next few weeks as this election is conducted. Mr. Speaker, we've just got some alarming news, which unfortunately is unsurprising, which is that California, once again, has the highest poverty rate of any state in the country. Despite the fact that we have some of the world's leading companies and all of the inherent advantages that we have as a state, we continue to lead the state in poverty with the nation in poverty with 7 million people, 17.7% of our residents not able to cover their basic needs. What's perhaps even more alarming is just since 2021, child poverty in California has doubled. Child poverty in California, the number of kids living below the poverty line, has doubled in California just in the last 4 years. That, sadly, is the price of failed leadership, as our state's supermajority and governor continue to impose policies that raise the cost of living while lowering economic opportunity. Those two factors combine to produce poverty in California unlike exists anywhere else in the United States. In addition to ranking number 1 in poverty, California also ranks number 1 in homelessness, number 1 in unemployment, and number 1 in wage stagnation. And it's no secret why. The state continues to impose regulations that raise the cost of doing business in the state, that raise the cost of housing, that raise the cost of water, that raise the cost of electricity, that raise the cost of just about every other good that a person needs, continues to impose the highest taxes in the country, including the highest taxes on gas, with new regulations now coming into place that one study estimated is going to raise the price of gasoline in California to $8 a gallon by the end of next year. So, Mr. Speaker, I am doing everything that I can here to counteract the failed corrupt policies that we see coming out of Sacramento. And we've had some successes. For example, I recently introduced and we passed a resolution to overturn California's ban on gas-powered cars, which means that Californians will continue to be able to drive the car of their choice, not one chosen for them by the government, and will save Californians a significant amount when it comes to the cost of their vehicle. We're also working on legislation. We've indeed secured funding to increase our state's water supply and to expand our domestic energy production in order to lower the price of gas and electricity in our state. But there's only so much we can do at the federal level when our state's politicians continue to fail the people of California. So I am continuing to urge leaders in Sacramento to work on common sense legislation to lower the cost of living in our state and to end the attacks on workers that have given us the nation's highest unemployment. We have so much potential in California. We are the greatest state in the country in so many ways, and if we simply had halfway decent policies in Sacramento, we would not have these outrageously tragic outcomes of having the highest poverty of any state in the country. Mr. Speaker, we have recently succeeded here in cutting off funding for the California high-speed rail disaster, which is, in my view, the worst public infrastructure failure in U.S. history. I introduced a bill at the beginning of this Congress saying that we should cut off all funding for high-speed rail, and following an investigation with Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, we have succeeded in doing just that. And yet, the governor of California has, rather than seeing the writing on the wall and winding this failed project down, has now said he's going to spend $20 billion more to keep it on life support, and has even accused me of lying, saying Representative Kiley continues to lie about California high-speed rail. So look, I am more than willing to be proven wrong. I am happy to be proven wrong. If the governor and his team would like to take me for a trip on the high-speed train from San Francisco to Los Angeles that was supposed to be built 5 years ago, I will happily retract my criticism. I am ready to hop on board when I fly home to California today. If the train is there, I will acknowledge my mistake and admit the accusation that has been leveled against me. But I don't think that's going to happen because no such train exists. In fact, not only do we not have a train from San Francisco to LA that was supposed to be finished 5 years ago, we don't have any stations. We do not have any track at all that has been laid. Not a single passenger has ridden anything. And now, the latest word is that even the initial segment from Bakersfield to Merced, that's not LA to San Francisco. For those who are less familiar with California geography, it is not a particularly populated area. That is even going to miss its 2033 deadline. The latest ambitious plan that's put forward is that maybe by 2045, we'll have a line from Palmdale to Gilroy, which would require taking 3 separate transit lines, a total of 6 hours, to get from LA to San Francisco, which you could do today on any airline in about an hour. So, Mr. Speaker, if I am lying, apparently a lot of other people are lying too. The New York Times, I suppose, is lying when it reported in an expose that this project is not on track to be completed even this century. So where do we go from here? Well, in my view, in cutting off federal funding, we have limited what opportunities the governor has to cause further damage to our state. He's come out and said, well, we're going to spend another $20 billion, but that's over the next 20 years. This is nothing more than an attempt to save face because the governor knows that I'm not lying. The governor knows this project is an embarrassing disaster. And he also knows that he's out of office in about a year. And so once we have a new governor, and we have in statute the commitment to not provide any more federal funding, which has kept the project on life support, it is my prediction that this disaster will be wound down and that our transportation dollars can go where they're actually needed to fixing our failing roads and providing for California's real transportation needs. Mr. Speaker, we've just received the latest report on the performance of students across this country when it comes to math and reading and civics. And the results are absolutely alarming. We have seen now 12th grade math scores reach the lowest score ever reported, with 45% of students not even showing the basic skills. The highest portion of students ever to fall below basic proficiency. Nearly half of the nation's students can't even apply single-step percentages to solve real-world problems. Less than a quarter, only 22% of 12th graders scored at or above proficient in math, down 2 points from 2019. The low scores are seen in these core subjects, and they're even below scores almost 2 decades earlier. And the data shows that this trend has continued and was started even before COVID-19. In 2024, only a third of 12th graders were considered academically ready for entry-level college math work, down 4% since 2019. We see similar results in reading. Over 32%, the largest percentage ever, scored below proficient in reading. And so when we look at both math and reading, we're seeing the worst performance ever for students across this country. I've been raising alarms about this trend for some time now. And as the chair of the House Subcommittee on K-12 education, we have been looking at how we can reverse this trajectory, which has been continuing for far too long in this country. And the truth is, we don't have to look far, because there are some places in America that are defying this alarming trend, that are applying basic principles of propelling student achievement in order to perform in a diametrically different way than schools elsewhere in the country. So to take one example, which we highlighted at a hearing earlier this year, you can look at Success Academy, which is a network of nearly 60 charter schools in New York. And I have here just one measure of their extraordinary success. As background, it should be understood that the demographics of Success Academy are largely students from underserved communities, with in fact 76% coming from economically disadvantaged homes. So when you look at this chart, you can see the number of students who passed one or more AP exam of the roughly 1,500 students, high school students, that Success Academy has. This is their network of schools, nearly 60 charter schools, but 1,500 high school students. 100% of their students passed at least one AP exam. These other bars are different states. You see 24% for Rhode Island, 24% for Vermont, 27% Virginia, 26% Colorado. Even states that do pretty well in the high 20s. California, which does not do so well, 28%. Massachusetts is the state with the highest score, 33%. Success Academy, 100%. In fact, every Success Academy high school graduate has been accepted to a four-year college, with many admitted to highly selective institutions. Overall, we've seen students led this at Success Academy last year, led the entire state in math scores, with 49% of Black and 55% of Hispanic students earning 4s, which is the highest level on the state exam. Now, by contrast, New York City's district schools, compared to that, 8% of Black and Hispanic students earned 4s. So 49% and 55% versus 8%. That is an astounding difference at a network of schools where the vast majority of students are below the poverty line. As a matter of fact, if Success Academy were its own district, it would be the single highest ranking school district in the state of New York. I had the opportunity to visit one of their schools just last week, and I was truly inspired by what I saw. The students were engaged in every classroom I visited. They were enthusiastic about learning, eager to participate, attentive. I didn't see one student's eyes wander or one disruption. The teachers were likewise truly passionate about the work that they were doing. The students are held to very high expectations and taught math and reading in a rigorous way, in an evidence-based way. They're taught things like focus by learning chess starting in kindergarten. And they've created a culture within each of their schools of high expectations that is felt in every classroom and by every student. It's no wonder that parents in New York are clamoring to get their kids into these schools. I had the chance to meet a number of these parents as well while I was there. The last time, for the last year, for the 3,200 spots that were available, there were 16,000 families that applied. And the law for charter schools is that you do a lottery. So 16,000 families applied, 3,200 lottery spots. If you won the lottery, then your child gets the chance to go to the highest performing network of schools in the state of New York, a network where 100% of the students are accepted to four-year universities, where 100% of high school students pass at least one AP exam, and where over 6 times more students achieve the highest level of proficiency as similarly situated students in district schools in New York City. Now, you would think that politicians in Albany, or for that matter in Sacramento, because our state has similar success stories when it comes to high-performing charter school networks, would be doing everything possible to expand these opportunities, but just the contrary. In New York, they have actually capped the number of charter schools that can be started, and in California, Governor Newsom and the supermajority have conducted a years-long war against charter schools, making it harder for them to start up and easier for them to be shut down. So I think it is important for us to reflect on these two sets of data. On the one hand, the nation's report card showing that our nation is in big trouble because of the continuing decline and failure of our public education system. But on the other hand, inspiring stories like that of Success Academy, where you have nearly 60 schools that are achieving extraordinary things for kids coming largely from underprivileged backgrounds. The urgent question that we need to ask is, how do we make every school in America look more like Success Academy, or more like the KIPP network of schools, or more like any number of successful charter networks, and for that matter, those traditional public schools that are doing a good job as well? We have been highlighting in our subcommittee why it is that we have this vast divergence in outcomes. And while education is largely the domain of state and local jurisdictions, we will continue to use whatever tools we have to encourage the adoption of best practices and to work towards accountability for those who are failing our students year after year. Mr. Speaker, I rise to highlight some curious news out of my state in California. It has just been revealed that a dog successfully voted in a recent election in California. The dog received a ballot in the mail and successfully cast that ballot, and indeed, even after the dog died, continued to receive a ballot in the mail. Now, the owner has now been charged by the Orange County District Attorney's Office for illegally registering her dog to vote, but she probably would have got away with it if she hadn't posted a photo of her dog on social media wearing an I voted sticker. So the individual here has been charged with a number of felonies for perjury, for procuring or offering a false or forged document, 2 felony counts of casting a ballot when not entitled to vote, 1 felony count of registering a non-existent person to vote. Just to be clear, dogs are not actually allowed to vote in California. And yet, in this case, the animal did. So the question we have to ask, Mr. Speaker, is how in the world do we have so few safeguards on our electoral process in California that such a thing could ever happen? I have proposed common sense solutions to this problem, requiring voter ID and passing the SAVE Act here in Congress to require proof of citizenship when registering to vote. Because while this is obviously a crazy example, a lot of people in our state lack trust in the integrity of our electoral process, especially when laws are passed year after year after year in the legislature, where now ballots are automatically sent to every registered voter, and those ballots continue to go out often when the voter has left the state or when the voter is no longer with us, where there is no proof of ID in order to register to vote or actually to vote, when registration is done automatically when one gets their driver's license, and where in recent years ballot harvesting laws have been passed where you don't even have to submit your ballot yourself, but someone could just come to your door and grab it for you. I think it is past time that we have reforms to our electoral process in California, and frankly, nationwide as well. I've discussed my opposition to partisan gerrymandering, and in addition to stopping this redistricting war right now going on, I believe that by the time we have the next round of scheduled redistricting, we need to end gerrymandering once and for all in this country. And I think perhaps there's a bargain that can be struck to have legislation that will protect the fairness of elections across America by instituting universal voter ID while ending gerrymandering once and for all. I believe that will restore fairness in American elections, and our democracy will be much better off for it. I would now like to yield to my colleague from North Carolina for as much time as he may consume.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor the life of Officer Gabriel Steinbeck, a young man taken far too soon in a senseless tragedy. Officer Steinbeck had just begun his career in law enforcement. Sworn in last December to the Cornelius Police Department in North Carolina, he had a bright future ahead of him. Gabe was recently married. He and his wife, Tiana, were out on a bike ride together when he was struck and killed by a vehicle. No family should ever have to endure that kind of loss. This was a young man who put his heart into his community. He was a state champion athlete, a college graduate, a pilot, and above all, someone who loved his faith and loved his family as well as his community. I want to extend my deepest condolences to his wife, his parents, and fellow officers. Officer Steinbeck represented the very best of us, and we will not forget him. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the life of Officer William Bill Broadway of the Huntersville Police Department, who recently lost his battle with cancer. In 2016, he joined the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department and later returned to serve closer to his home in Huntersville. His colleagues remember him for his professionalism, but more so for the compassion and the courage that he brought to the job every single day. Bill faced his cancer diagnosis with the same strength that he showed throughout his life. Even in his final days, his faith remained strong and his love for his family was unwavering. Officer Broadway leaves behind a legacy of service and sacrifice that will never be forgotten. I extend my deepest condolences to his wife, Sarah, his son, Declan, and the entire Broadway family. With that, I yield back to the gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Chair lays before the House the following enrolled bill.
H.R. 452, an act to award 3 congressional gold medals to the members of the 1980 U.S. Olympic men's ice hockey team in recognition of their extraordinary achievement at the 1980 Winter Olympics where, being comprised of amateur collegiate players, they defeated the dominant Soviet hockey team in the historic Miracle on Ice, revitalizing American morale at the height of the Cold War, inspiring generations and transforming the sport of hockey in the United States.
Pursuant to Clause 13 of Rule 1, the House stands adjourned until 9 a.m. on Tuesday, September 23, 2025.